Hi Soundies. In today's class we will be learning how to import a movie into Logic Pro X, and we will also be learning how to import a sound effect into the asset bin in Logic Pro X for use in sound to picture work. Okay, so what I'd like you to do first, and do this step by step with me, I'd like you to double click on your sound to picture template that should be on your desktop. Okay, do this now. And then you should have, once it's loaded, this screen and this timeline with dialogue, Foley, Atmos, music diegetic, music non-diegetic, basically the template we did in the previous tutorials. If you don't have this, or if you have any problems with this, just contact or draw the attention of my real-life avatar, who's probably sitting in a corner, socially distancing, hopefully with shorter hair. Okay, so he might be pressing pause right now. Just kidding. Okay, so I'm going to assume that everything has gone swimmingly and everybody has this timeline on their main window. Yep. Okay, so what we need to do first is open the movie. So I'd like you to go to File and go down to Movie and select Open Movie. I'll just hold that there for a second so you can see. Yeah, good. Okay, so click on that. You should have remote access to the shared space in the Williams server, and you'll find in the MA2120 shared space, you will find a folder called Tutorial Movies. I'm just going to access it from my own external hard drive. If it proves that we don't have remote access, or we have some issue with regards to accessing that particular shared space, I will have sent the film directly to you through a large file transfer. But for the purposes of this tutorial, let's assume that you do have access. So I'm just going to click on Reese Music. I'm just going to go to icons list, and I'm looking for, I tell you what, I'll just go by, I'm just going to select by date added. Here we go. No, let's have date last opened. There we go. Okay, today, thank God. So I've navigated to my own files, which I should have better control over, but there we go. I'm going to open Tutorial Movies. There are currently 2 movies in this folder. There could well be more by the time term starts. This is currently August, and I'm making these tutorials in preparation for a potentially blended or online class. The one that I want you to select is The Door. This is what we'll be working on. The next tutorial will be starting working on this sound to picture project as a means of developing operational skills and other transferable skills for Logic Pro X. There is no sound to picture requirement in terms of assessment for MA2120, but you can design a film should you wish to do so. And there are plenty of transferable skills, and a sound to picture project I find is the best way of introducing the whole range of operational functionality of Logic Pro X. It's a good way of getting you started, basically. So, third years, I'd like you to do the same thing. If you're looking at this for revision, I'd like you to open up the Door original cut movie and start designing that. This is for revision purposes, because very soon we'll be going on to the Door MA3022. Which is a revised version of the same film with some filters and some cuts, and where we'll be not designing the sound for a film, but designing the design for a sound for a film. It'll all make sense. I digress. Second years, ignore all of that. I just want you to click on the Door original cut and select Open. Now, the frame rate of the film is 25 FPS, and as you well know, because I went on about it in some detail, your timeline should be, your template should be set at 25 FPS. So it'll have opened up the movie easily for you. But cunning that I am, I changed the preset to 2997 for the frame rate because I wanted to show you what happens if you import a movie that has a different frame rate to the template that you set. And this is entirely possible. It's entirely possible that a film has been shot on 2997 and you've got a 25 FPS template. So as we can see here, the movie frame rate doesn't match the project frame rate. The movie has a frame rate of 25 FPS. The project is currently set at 2997. What do you do? What do you do? It's very simple, and Logic hints at what you should do by highlighting in blue the correct option. Always, 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 always use the frame rate that the film has been shot at. This is because if a film's been shot at 2997 and you import it, or you keep the 25 FPS and you start doing synchronized sound on your timeline to the film, on the timeline it'll all be fine, it'll all work, and it'll all be synced up. But when we then bounce that as a stereo track to import into Avid or into Premiere to sync underneath the actual cut of the film, it'll drift because the sound thinks it's working at 25 FPS and the film is working at 2997, and the sound and the image will drift apart, and you get synchronization problems. So always use the frame rate that the film was shot at. So I'm going to go use 25. And I eventually get to the point where you've been for the last minute or so, where you have the video track at the top of the timeline, and a picture window which you can adjust according to your needs. Let's click it on an actual image. There we go. That's George Mackenzie. He made this film just after he'd completed all of his set work in his third year. This was 2005, I think, a long time ago. I use this particular film because it's excellent, because it has lots of environmental demands, lots of Foley and action demands, and a little bit of supernatural sound design, and there's no dialogue. So this is why we're using The Door, even though it's 15 years old now. God, I feel old. Okay, so there we go. We can change the size of the image according to our demands, and when I click it shut using this little close tab here, you'll notice it goes into a reference window at the very top left hand side of the timeline. So you can continually reference this for when you're just doing basic sound or environmentals, but when you need to look specifically at the image in more detail, in more resolution, because you're doing some action sound like Foley, footsteps and things like that, you can just double click and it opens it up like so. And also moving the timeline on the clip, the progress bar of the clip also moves the actual timeline itself, as you can see. Okay, so I'm going to close this down. What do we do next, Reese? Well, we always save. So I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Save As. The first time that we save a new project, we always save as. And I'm going to create, I'm going to go to Reese Music, and I'm going to create a folder called The Door Post Prod. There we go. Pot prod. Post prod. Short for post production. I love to use, I insist on using project folders, even though all of the assets, as we know, will be embedded into the icon. Nevertheless, goodness only knows what extra bits you're going to have, so I always create a production folder. And do this in your own space. So there we go. In the Save As window, I'm going to call it The Door Post. That's another way of saying post-production. And remember, we organize our projects as a package. We will want to copy into the following files into our project, all the audio files. We will want the sampler audio data because I will be showing how to use the sampler as part of this ongoing project. And of course the movie file. Right now you are playing the movie file from the shared space. So we need to copy that movie file into your own space. And so the first save as for a project, we make sure that the movie file is ticked. From this point on, it'll take a little bit of time, the first save, because it's actually copying the movie into your folder. Subsequent saves will be much, much quicker. So don't worry if you get the wheeling ball of psychedelic death. It's just copying the film into your own production folder. So I'm going to go save. This might be a good time to check your text messages and stuff like that. There we have it. And you can tell that it's been saved because at the very top above the number counter, you've got the door in brackets post, or however you labeled it. Okay. So what I want to show you now is how to import a sound effect from a sound effect library. You should have remote access to the Media Arts sound effects library in the Williams server, in its own space. I would encourage you, wherever possible, I don't know if you can do it remotely, but if you're on campus, to copy the whole entire library for your own use at home, particularly in these post-COVID blended class times. I think it's a good idea to copy the entire library. So get yourself a hard drive and either do it by remote or come on to campus and copy it. It'll probably take about an hour on campus. But feel free to do that. But for the purposes of this class, if you don't already have the sound effects library, the third years all have it, then we can access it through remote access. So first of all, I'd like you to click on the little browser window. Now there's this little tab up here, this little button. If you position it, you can just press F, or you can just click on it, and it opens up what is essentially your sound asset bin for this particular project. And we want to select audio file. So click on audio file and click on add audio file. I'll just hold it there for a second. Okay, so open that. There we go. Let me just navigate back a bit. There we go. So I'm going to go to my folder, my hard drive, I should say, which in your case will be the MA2120. No, it won't be. It'll be the Williams server, and it'll be the sound effects space on the Williams server. I've already copied mine. Well, in fact, these are mine that I've copied into the server, if I'm entirely honest, which is why I'm quite happy for you to copy them. So I'm going to open up the sound effects library. I'm just going to change this to name. There we go. So we can see them all without worrying about when it was added and so on and so forth. We have a whole pile of different sounds. Some of them have catalogues included, some don't. Sound effects library BBC does. You can see it there. You can't open it from this window, but you can just open it up and you can refer. I know, because I know this film, that we're going to need a little river sound. So I'm just going to open up BBC 001 Miss or Miscellaneous and River Small, which is BBC 001, which is the CD number, -03, which is the track number. If I go to a list, here we go. So there we are, C-Wash Calm, C-Wash Choppy, BBC Sound Effects CD 1, track 3, River Small. And they've already been conformed to 48 kilohertz, so we don't need to do I'm just going to click on add. So I've selected that, click add. We don't need to do a conversion. Now, can you see that's been grayed out, which means we can't add it again, but we can. You might well have a list of sound effects. You know that you need a certain amount of sound effects. So you can actually try and locate all of those or different versions of the same effect to see which works best at any one go. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to choose the one. And I'm going to go done. And there it is. Here we go in our bin, BBC One. So, and if I drag this now onto the Atmos track, there it is. And when we save next, this file in this bin will be saved as well. But I'm just going to undo all of that. Edit, undo. No, actually, I'm going to save it because we're going to be using the River Small. So I'm just going to go to File, Save. And there we have it. Okay, so I'm going to end this particular tutorial at this point. And the next tutorial will be a more sprawling affair where we will do some post-production sound design, including atmospherics, live Foley, and digital Foley. I don't know how it's going to work, whether it's just going to be one long tutorial which you can pause and work on, or whether I'll do it in little segments. I don't know yet. It's going to be an exploration for us both, for us all. But for now, well done. Make sure you've saved this. Go and have a cup of tea.